Good evening.
Good evening, Nigel. How are you?
Good evening. I'm well. I just wish we'd done this a long time ago, Brian, but we didn't, and we are where we are. And now we're being told that there'll be so many exemptions that it might become almost meaningless, Brian.
I agree with you, Nigel, on many things over the years, with Brexit to the points-based immigration system.
Yep.
To many other things, but this is one particular policy that I profoundly disagree with you on, which is
you tell me
quarantining travellers, because it's going to decimate the tourism industry. Nobody's going to travel if you have to quarantine for 2 weeks, either for business or tourism industry. And our country is quite reliant on the international travellers who come here to spend vast amounts of money in places like Oxford Street or all sorts of, and the airports will shut if they impose the quarantine, because there's just not going to be enough volume to sustain keeping the airport. So that means it's going to decimate air travel as we know it. Well, Brian, we are a global economy. We can't.
I said we are where we are. Right, but I'm going to have to go back in response to you. That Sunday morning, 3 months ago, when I was broadcasting here on LBC, it was the day, Brian, that Lombardy, just the region of Lombardy, had gone into lockdown. So fearful were they about the rising rate of coronavirus. And on that very same day, Brian, 17 flights from Milan's Malpensa airport came into the United Kingdom without a single person being temperature tested, a single person being given any advice as to what they should or should not do, and without a single person being told they really should isolate and self-quarantine for up to 2 weeks. Brian, do you understand why I felt that that was the moment to act, and why not acting, even if it was for the good of Oxford Street, even if it was for the good of our tourism industry, meant many thousands more people have died than otherwise would have done?
But I have one point, though. It depends what your strategy is, ultimately. If your strategy is to eliminate any spread of infection within your nation state, like New Zealand has done, for instance, they could probably be looking at closing their borders for 6 months or a year, even. Is that something we want to... Is that your strategy?
Well, no, Brian, my strategy was we were dealing with something unknown. We'd never confronted this particular virus before. We needed desperately to buy ourselves time. And as Boris Johnson told us, as a country, stay at home. As Matt Hancock told us, this is an order. Stay at home. As they were telling us to do that, people were still flying in from northern Italy, 20 flights a day from New York. We were importing coronavirus at the very same time, Brian. We were asking the population to lock down. And I felt that was the moment to stop it. I would agree, going on to a long-term quarantine will have very damaging economic effects. But I mean, I'm fearful of a second wave, aren't you?
And I think we're past the peak, so they say. But I agree with you that if the quarantine made any sense, it probably made sense very early in the pandemic.
Okay.
But we're already through we're past the peak where the rate of infection in our country is much higher than pretty much every other country in the world.
That's ironically, yes, no, we are there. But Brian, would quarantine be a useful way of stopping a second big peak?
Sorry, I lost you there.
It's all right. I said, Brian, it's all right. I said, Brian, would using quarantine here on in, would it be a useful way of helping stop a second big peak?
I probably don't think so, because the second peak is probably likely to come in the next, in the winter again, rather than in the summer.
Okay.
And the summer holidays are the peak period from a tourism perspective, either for the British people who work in the service industries, or the British people who go abroad in the summer.
You've made your point very well. Thank you.